Hi, everybody. I'm here with Joshua Sklut. Josh, great to see you. Thanks for joining me today. Give us a quick introduction to you and your background, first of all.
Great. Hey, Adam. Great to be here. I'm Josh Sklut. I'm based in New Jersey. I am a COO and co-founder of a company called MyStandard. We are a disruptive talent acquisition product that's been released on the market, specializing in helping candidates find new jobs.
You didn't enter the workforce as co-founder of MyStandard. Tell us a bit about what you did before.
I didn't? Oh, you're right. So I've been a recruiter about 20 years. I've done everything in the recruiting space. I had my own recruiting agency. I've worked in-house. I've worked on the outside in the agency on, search world. I've been head of TA. I've built talent acquisition departments from the ground up. So I pretty much have touched just about every facet of the space from a recruiting and TA perspective.
Okay, so you're perfectly placed to be able to talk to me about recruiter enablement. Recruiter enablement, to me, it's all about making sure that recruiters have all of the knowledge and assets and tools and props and calculators and things that they need to get their tasks done. The job of a recruiter is one of the broadest among every corporate job. They've got to be marketers, they've got to be business analysts, they've got to be sourcers, they've got to be negotiators, they've got to be counselors, right?
100%.
From your experience, what are some of the good ways and bad ways and things that we need to think about when we're enabling recruiters to be successful?
I mean, I think the beautiful thing about the market right now, because of all the different tools that are out there, it really gives us an opportunity to get back to the basics of what recruiting and TA should be, which is, high touch, people to people kind of relationship based work, right? I think all of us who go into recruiting or end up in recruiting, as the case may be, don't go there because we're like, ooh, there's some really good technology in this space. We're in it for the people, right? We're in it for the conversation. We're in it for the relationship. We're in it for the joy we get out of taking a person out of a bad situation and putting them into a good situation or a better situation. We're all in it for getting that bottle of champagne from the candidate that you placed in a C-level role that is so thankful that you got a hold of them. So anything that we can do as TA leadership to enable our teams to do that and have that ability to spend their time doing what they do best is as advantageous. So with all the tools that are out there, anything that makes the mundane tasks of recruiting, which oftentimes we spend a lot of time on, if we abstract that and take that out of the equation so that people don't have to do those things, that gives us the ability to do what we do best, to maintain those relationships, to connect the dots.
Okay, so let's get specific. I mean, recruiters, they need social media posts, they need interview questions, they need market intelligence, they need all of these different things. What are some of your tips for how to land it in their hands?
In terms of what they should, what do you mean by that?
Make it accessible to them. There's so many different things they need and different places they need to go to. How can we save them time?
That's a great question. So I think in general, what the space needs, I would guess would be a new job that's sort of going to be created over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, is like a procurement specialist as it relates to TA. So there are so many tools, right? There's so many applicant tracking systems. There are so many AI, marketed AI tools out there that are supposed to make our lives more efficient. No one single, if you're trying to do your job and be a recruiter, you don't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to kind of go through all of these things, to be able to kind of research all of these things, to be able to kind of, bless you, to be able to kind of reach out to all the tools in the market and test market each one. So I think an interesting opportunity, an interesting job will be a person who's a liaison, I guess, between TA, HR, I call them procurement specialists, someone whose job it is to literally analyze all these tools, find out what the best ones are, and then make recommendations, and then be able to implement those tools and get those candidates or those candidates in terms of the candidates for the products you're going to use tested and marketed for your particular company.
Are you a fan of setting up your team with 360-degree recruiters who do everything, or segmenting the different sort of specialist areas?
That's a really good question. I mean, I guess it depends on the company, right? If you're a large enterprise level company and you've got 10,000 positions that you're working on, then the specialization is probably a better route. If you're a small company and you're only dealing with a handful of candidates on a monthly basis or a very specific niche, then the 360 approach probably makes more sense, because ultimately, what do we want to do as recruiters? We want to be the one single point of contact for the candidate throughout the entire process, right? Because you're the person that they've connected with, you're their agent or their representative. They don't want to deal with a lot of different people. They only want to deal with one person and get the situation based on that one person's take. But a large scale organization where you're dealing with so many factors, there's no way you can possibly have that kind of connection or high touch relationship. So I guess it's really dependent on the situation. From a personal perspective, maybe it's a generational thing. I always prefer the 360 approach. I like to handle things from initial contact all the way through start date. So
a lot of people love the variety of the role, right, as well, and that's one of the things that attracts them to it. So
yeah.
What in terms of tech stack, like we talked about, I mean, I agree with your point about like the TA procurement specialist. That's a really great that's an interesting job. I'd like to do that myself.
Yeah.
Tell me about, in terms of tech stack, I mean, are you a fan of like the kind of generalist that can do lots of things, or are you a fan of lots and lots of best of breed point solutions, or what's your experience of that?
It's an unfair question. Personally, I like I would prefer if everything were under one roof, right? I just think that using one tool to do everything would be great. I don't know if that tool exists, and I think every tool that I've ever used always has some glitch. Like I'm yet to see a miraculous piece of technology that does everything, because there's always some problem. It doesn't do this, or it doesn't do that, or it acts weird when you do this, or you have to jiggle it this way. You know what I mean? So it's challenging to find that one piece. Conversely, if there's a tool that only does one thing and it does that one thing extremely well, then I'm all about doing that as well. So if you've got, this applicant tracking system just collates these candidates and makes it easy for me to access their data, great. And then this one does scheduling like really, really well. And then this one does testing really, really well. I'm all about that too, because if they only do that one thing, then that you can always have these things open on your dashboard and kind of click through them as you need be on a for your workflow.
Great, good insights, because you have experienced it from like every angle, I guess, as a recruiter, as an agency owner, as a head of TA.
Yeah.
Now, you've done something different over the last couple of years. So tell us about MyStandard, because this is one of the most interesting. You and I got connected because I was listening to you talking about this on a podcast, and I just thought, this is really different. So tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so MyStandard is a tool where you can download both apps in the app stores right now if you're in the US. And you basically, we are trying to ditch the resume. We think that resumes just by definition are the problem. Why? Because if you look at LinkedIn and like what I call the Tinderization of recruiting, where you're just flipping through profile after profile, you're not really connecting with anything. You're not actually focusing on the key factors, which is the person's ability to do the job. Plus, you're creating a bias because you're making decisions based on things that have nothing to do with the person's ability, their picture, what their name is, where they went to school, who they work for. So what we do, this is a blockchain tool. So it's encrypted and protected. It's sitting on your phone. Your phone is your server. Companies have the opportunity to reach out to you based on their criteria. So you'll get a notification on your phone if you match the criteria for this job. You'll only get a notification at that point. And you get a chance to look at the opportunity. If you are interested in the opportunity, again, this is all anonymous until the connection is made. You can then say yes. You can send your data. You have permission. You give the ability to permission your data over to the company. Let's say IBM, who's on our board of directors. They need a software engineer, 150K in New York. You match that. IBM then asks for access to your data, and IBM pays you, the user, for access to that data, which is very revolutionary. In other words, instead of paying a third-party middleman like LinkedIn, who's basically you're paying for a subscription, you're now actually paying the owners of the data. So you get to monetize your own information. What it also does on top of that is it gives you companies the opportunity to have a less biased hiring process, because it's all anonymized until they've already paid for something. So by definition, you're going to have a broader and a more diverse workforce, which every company, large or small, is always shooting for, because they're tired of having complaints that there's a problem. We only have white men in this company. There's not enough diversity in the organization. So it's a kind of to your point, it's kind of revolutionary. We We take the bias out of hiring. We make everything anonymous. We don't require a resume. We don't make companies pay a subscription price. They only pay for what they need. And we believe that if we can peel 5 to 10% of LinkedIn's revenue away from them and use our services as opposed to theirs, they're going to have a more diverse workforce. They're going to spend less money, and they're going to have higher quality hires.
I imagine that there's lots of different use cases for this, both from the customer or the employer and the candidate perspective.
Yeah.
Let's talk about candidates first. I imagine that for a candidate, like the types of people who they actually hid their LinkedIn profiles years ago anyway, they're probably not even on LinkedIn anymore. The likes of software engineers and scientists and people in a lot of those left brain professions, which are in high demand, the STEM professions. Is that one of the big, but then again, it probably applies to sales as well, because I know that that's cyclical, but I mean, there's a lot of the time where high performing salespeople are in big demand as well. So there's people that are in big demand. Is a place for them? Is it an exclusive place?
That's a great question. No, I mean, to your point earlier, what we found with our research is a lot of really valuable people have turned off all their notifications on LinkedIn because they're tired of getting reached out to by companies about jobs that they're not relevant or interested in, and by search firms and recruiters who are just looking to basically add to their database for future opportunities. So it's unfortunate because those people are actually cutting themselves off from potentially really good opportunities, right? Even though I understand the premise, they are tired of being bothered, they're missing out, right? With our structure, once you download the app and you put all of your information in there, you are not bothered until you match up precisely with that person, with that company's need. And you always have the opportunity anonymously to say no. So if you're not interested in that opportunity, you don't have to say yes. So the reality of the situation is that 80% of people in their current position, whether they're happy or not, are open to listening to other opportunities. And as a recruiter and from a search background, you'll appreciate this. We're always looking for what we're calling passive searchers, right? A passive searcher is somebody who's not looking at the moment, but is open to listening. So if you get an opportunity not only to monetize that data, but to have access to jobs that you probably weren't privy to prior, that is relevant at all levels. That's relevant at the entry level as all the way up to the C level, right? So you now have control of your data, you have control of your information, and you can then finally connect with an opportunity anonymously without anybody knowing anything and not having to do any of the slog of either rejecting a bunch of stuff you're not interested in or applying to 5,000 jobs on LinkedIn and getting no response. So we've kind of really abstracted it and made everything so simple that it's one touch situation where you can find out about things that you didn't know about and monetize that data.
Okay, so for companies, I mean, I'm thinking like if I was talent acquisition manager in a company that is not a household name, this is a particularly good thing for me to do, to be able to get my name in front of that person who's got the skills that I want.
Absolutely.
If I'm the absolute like market leader everybody wants to work for, then I mean, this is the same in every form of talent attraction, right? I could sit back and everybody comes to me, but most people don't have that luxury position, do they?
Yeah, well, it works actually in both of those instances. There's two problems there associated. One, you're either the very well-known, like a Netflix, right, where you're getting 9,000 applications. So that's a waste of time. Or you're an unknown, right? And you don't want to have to deal with 9,000 applications. You feel like you have a good product. You feel like you have a good team. You feel like you're well-funded. You have the opportunity to get to attract some talent, but you don't want to go through the typical process of blasting it out on LinkedIn just to get inundated or be ignored either way. So on both those cases, our tool is a better option because at Netflix, you're trying to reduce the amount of applicants to an exact right figure, right? To 50 or less resumes to look at. And on the other side, as the small unknown company, you're trying to gather more data. You're trying to get as many good candidates as possible. So you can widen the filter so people are like, oh, I've never heard of this company, but let me take a look at them. Let me investigate on my own, with my own time. So it works on both. It works in both areas because, as I said earlier, it's not about resume and it's not about profile. It's about ability to do the job. It's about specific skills for specific need. That's what every candidate wants and every company wants. They want to hire the best candidate possible for the job, and every candidate wants to be wants to find a job that matches what they want to do.
I mean, I understand the rationale completely. I think it's great. I think it's a very ambitious project. And, you know, if you're successful, you're going to be extremely successful. So, Josh, thanks for taking the time to join me today. It's been great to hear about it. I hope people have found it interesting.
Yeah, go to mystandard.io, download the app on iPhone and on Android. Join us or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm, again, Joshua Sklut.
Wonderful. Cheers, Josh.
All right, Adam. Thanks for your time.